Residents on the emergency response efforts, the event impacts, and processes and procedures that will follow the incident. At approximately 1 a.m. this morning, an explosion occurred at our TPC facility in Port Neches off of FM 366. The event occurred in the South 4 Group processing area, which manufactures or processes butadiene, a chemical used in the manufacture of synthetic rubber and other products. The event is ongoing, and before I provide more detail on the overall emergency response effort, I'd like to provide Jefferson County Judge Jeff Brannick and some of the other emergency response personnel present here today to provide updates to the public, and especially those in the impacted areas.
Thank you. From an emergency management standpoint, we're looking to bring together the people, the environment, and the assets that are necessary to achieve successful results. I think that we have that, and that we have a long-standing group, the Sabine Nature's Chiefs Association, which is a multi-agency emergency response mutual aid group that's been in existence for many, many years. It's composed of local governments and federal government, state government, emergency responders, along with the emergency responders from all the various plants in our area. They bring together a wealth of knowledge and experience in emergency management, as well as the assets that have been made available to us by all of the plants that are members. Our focus, as always, is going to be on public safety, the environment, and successful conclusion of the fire suppression operations. As we sit here right now, I don't think the focus is really on putting the fire out. It's letting the materials that are in there burn themselves out and keeping the surrounding tanks cool with the water that's being sprayed from the Lower Neches Valley Authority. I am thankful for everyone who's taking part in the emergency response efforts. The TPC and their personnel have been extremely cooperative with both the county emergency management personnel, as well as with TCEQ, the EPA, and the Coast Guard, and other agencies that are there. So I'm thankful for that cooperation. I think he'll be telling you in a little while about I was awakened this morning when the front and back doors of my house were blown in, damaging them pretty significantly, and TPC is stepping up to create a hotline, which I know that they're going to be making available to the media, and we appreciate them being proactive in that regard.
Okay. Let me go ahead and first start addressing the emergency response after the event kicked off. We immediately activated our emergency response plan and requested immediate assistance from surrounding facilities such as Huntsman, the Sabine Nature's Chiefs Association, which is, as Judge Brannick mentioned, the mutual aid organization, as well as the Port Neches Fire Department. The event was immediately reported to all local, state, and federal authorities. All on-site personnel were immediately evacuated and accounted for. Incident command was then established. However, due to our inability to get on the location because of the size of the event, as well as the impacts to the off-site EOC, which is our secondary EOC, damage there, we ended up having to establish our emergency operations center at the Huntsman Administration Building off of Spur 136. Our objectives have always been life safety first, whether that comes to the life safety of our responders or the life safety of our public. So we are certainly going to stay focused on that. Life safety is our first priority in all instances. We're also trying to minimize impacts to the community as well as the environment. And as Judge mentioned, our main goal right now is fire suppression with ultimately fire extinguishment. Related to personnel that were on location, we did have 3 on-site personnel sustain injuries at the time of the event. All 3 of the personnel were taken to the medical center of Southeast Texas. 2 of the personnel were TPC employees. One of the persons was a contractor. Ultimately, one of the TPC employees was eventually transferred to Houston Memorial in the medical center. But we're very happy and thankful to report that all 3 employees have been treated and released. We have initiated, and we did initiate, air monitoring immediately after the event. That process is still ongoing. Immediately in the vicinity, we picked up no type of disruption in air quality. However, we have begun to pick up some, obviously, as you would expect, downwind. We do have personnel both within the emergency response organization as well as contract folks that we've secured to provide area monitoring as well. To date, I don't have any data that's come back to let us know whether or not anything has been reported. So that that monitoring is ongoing, and we will continue that obviously throughout the course of the event. We do, based on what Judge said, we do recognize that we did impact a lot of folks off-site, and there's obviously been reported damage, physical damage to residencies, glass broken, doors jammed in their frames, etc. Some of the impacts have even displaced residents. So we're working diligently with our insurance provider and have established a process hotline or a claims hotline, and that number is 866-601-5880. Let me repeat that for you. 866-601-5880. As I mentioned earlier, the event is ongoing, and everyone always wants to know immediately how did it occur. At this time, that's not our focus. Our focus is on responding to the event. We will be creating an investigation team, and we will be seeking the root causes of the event, certainly to fully investigate the incident and understand why it occurred. As I mentioned, right now we're staying focused on the safety of our emergency response personnel, folks in and around in the community, as well as trying to protect the environment. A little bit about TPC. We have about 175 full-time employees and 50 contractors on the work location. Many of the employees and contractors call us Port Neches as well as Southeast Texas their home. So you can imagine how they feel about the impacts to their own homes and their own communities. We are deeply committed to the city and our neighbors, and we're grateful for the strong relationships that we've already had established and will continue with our community and our industry partners. We ask that you stay tuned for those that need more information as it becomes available. There's a Facebook page for Jefferson County Office of Emergency Management, and there's updates being provided there. We certainly will have media releases as information becomes available. And before I finish, I did want to just provide one more time the claims number that we've created, and I'll go over it twice. The claims number is
866-601-5880.
Look at that. And once again, 866-601-5880. Mayor, would you have to say something?
Just very briefly, the city of Port Neches, we have an outstanding staff here. Our city manager, fire chief, police chief, and our public works department. They work very closely with the county and the state in these types of emergencies. So they're in constant contact. We're invited to all and participate in all of the command centers. And TPC is a very good citizen of our city. They've always been very good to the city, and we appreciate them, so our hearts go out to them as well. But I was one of the ones that live within the half a mile of the event, and I understand what getting blown out of bed means now, because you're up quick. Windows, structural damage, I'm one of those. But they have, right off the bat, shown concern for the citizens of the city of Port Neches, which is my concern, and they always have. You notice a while ago, between the workers and the citizens first, and then the assets of the company. That says a lot to me. So I want to say we appreciate TPC. We appreciate all y'all being here to share that with our citizens. They get their information from you. We have different things set up through the county, through Stan, I believe it is, and a few other things that they can call, but not everybody knows about that. They watch your stations, they read your papers, and they get their information for you. And it's extremely important that you take the information and ask the questions from TPC and get it right. They have the people that can provide you with the correct answers so that our people aren't out there guessing. Because you know YouTube can blow up to stuff that does nothing but get people upset. So they're looking to you, and we appreciate you. Again, we appreciate TPC, we appreciate the county, the state, and I am especially proud of our staff here at Port Neches. They take care and guard the citizens. So thank you very much. Thanks, Troy.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay, we'll take a few questions. We'll start with the local outlets, please. Kelsey or Channel 12, if you guys, or Jacob, if you have some stuff to ask.
This morning, people were out and about all over Port Neches, especially within that half-mile radius that you asked people to evacuate. At this point, what should they do? Because I know a lot of people are concerned about leaving their homes when the front door is wide open and all the windows are broken out.
Well, I think that the concerns, we can call for mandatory evacuations, we can call for radius evacuations and so forth, but the truth of the matter is that in an emergency, you can't utilize your law enforcement to go out and arrest people for disobeying an evacuation order. Our focus is to just get out to the people that they need to exercise caution. They need to understand that a significant event has occurred. And if they're, for instance, somebody in the path of the plume, if they feel any irritants or have any respiratory conditions or allergies, then it's in their best interest to go to a relative's home or a friend's home and get out of that wind direction. So, we think people ought to use just good old common horse sense, because emergency personnel are too busy to try to enforce those things.
And are there more details to share about this chemical and the things that people might be affected by today, feeling, or the danger level of it?
So the most common thing is going to be respiratory type irritation. That's going to be mostly from the smoke, not necessarily from the chemical itself. You have to understand that with the plant being on fire, the chemical is actually being consumed as part of the fire. Unfortunately, this type of fire produces smoke, and the smoke is an irritant. To Judge Brenning's point, you don't want to be downwind from this, so you need to take all necessary precautions to move cross or upwind from the event and find yourself not in that plume.
We did find some violations, air quality violations from the plant, from the CEQ. Would you like to respond to those previous air quality violations?
So I don't have any knowledge of those violations, but I can certainly take your name and I can get with someone in our environmental department and I can get them to follow back up with you. I apologize.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Yep. And also, we've had a question about water, not necessarily watersheds and lakes and streams. However, there was heavy rain, right? So our folks were questioning, okay, if this, adjutant pollutant is up in the environment, it rains, could that downpour have an impact?
So rain is actually going to be our friend in this particular instance because it's going to knock the plume down. There's nothing for us to really be concerned with in the fact that the rain is going to mix with something within the plume and then create something more hazardous at ground level. The plume is what it is. I mean, it's a byproduct of burning hydrocarbons that we have in the facility, as well as burning metal, burning grass, and anything else that the fire is consuming along the way. So we have taken, at the moment, as best a defensive position as we possibly can in order to try to get everything initiated as cooling, isolate as much as we possibly can so that we're not continuing to feed the source of the fire. and then develop a strategy by which we can actually take emergency responders into that hot zone and actually begin to make more local isolations and eventually snuff the fire out.
When do you expect that to happen?
It's hard for me to say. I know that at the time that I left for this, we were still in defensive mode, and I have not had an update since I've been here, so I really could not tell you exactly when we would start an offensive strategy.
Could you tell me your position again?
Yes, sir. I'm sorry. I'm the Director of Health, Safety, and Security with
There's
TPC.
a lot of debris in some people's yards, pieces of sheet metal, little, black pieces of, I don't even know what it is. What should people know about that stuff? Should they, rake it up and throw it away?
So
or-
my advice would be not to touch it. Call that 1-866 number. Sorry, I don't have it committed to memory. But call the hotline that we've established, and if need be, we'll come out, evaluate it, and we'll arrange for disposal. We certainly don't want people touching it with their bare hands, et cetera, because it could be contaminated. And again, I'm not really sure what debris you're exactly talking about other than the examples you listed, but we certainly do not want our folks, our public in harm's way. So our best advice is to leave that stuff alone, call the hotline that we've established, and then we'll make arrangements to come out and evaluate it and get it cleaned up.
Jacob, can we get a question from you?
So, how did the response this morning compare to the contingency plan that the plant filed with local emergency services in the state?
The best laid plans, right? So, I mean, we followed our plan. That's the best thing that I could tell you. We certainly did reach out immediately because we knew the scale and the size of the event would overwhelm our ability to manage it in-house. And that's part of our plan, right? Call for help, it's fourth and long, and we've got to get some additional help here, and we certainly did that. So the combined efforts, again, I applaud all of the additional agencies and emergency responders companies. We've had calls from folks in Houston, we've had calls from folks in Beaumont. Hey, I've got equipment, I've got people, we're coming. All you got to do is tell us we're on the way. We're withholding those long distance ones because, again, our intent is to get this extinguished obviously as quickly as possible, but in the event that this turns into multiple hours, we're going to have to start looking at longer term strategies as far as relieving personnel. Exhaustion's eventually going to set in, right? So we want to have that bank of resources, all those folks that have been kind enough to offer us help. We want to have that bank of resources available to us in case this thing gets extended.
Do you know, was the plant required to pay a bond for a contingency like this? And if so, how much that might be?
I do not know that knowledge. I don't have any knowledge of that. I don't know.
Troy, do you have any idea at this point, I'm sorry, this is my turn, how much stuff is burned off and how much stuff is left to burn? And again, sort of the plan now is you're not dousing water on the fire itself, is that right?
Well, yes and no, right? So in this particular instance, you talk about extinguishment, versus containment. Our job right now is to try to contain the fire. We want to try to minimize the area of impact, and we want to try to minimize the fire's impact to adjacent equipment. When fire has an opportunity to actually expand out, metal's only going to last so long in that heat, and then it's going to begin to fail, and then you're going to begin to compound the event. So our primary goal right now in this defensive strategy that I've explained to you is to put water on equipment, get water in and on those fires in order to try to keep things cool so that we don't compound the event by having a tank fail or having some other type of issue that way. Does that answer your question?
It does. And then, any idea at this point the volume of things that have already burned off? The volume
We
of
don't,
plastic burned off?
yeah, we don't know. I'm going to be honest with you. I think we know of at least 3 of our tanks that were involved, but we've not been able to get in. So it's very difficult for us to say exactly which pieces of equipment have been involved, to the extent that they've been involved. I mean, you have to understand, we had a total power outage at the time that the event occurred. So even for us to be able to get into our data recorders and see where our volumes were on our vessels and what our flows were within our pipeline, it's difficult to do. We'll have to do that through forensics.
But I think it's important to note that in the wee hours of the morning that the pipelines that supply material to the plants were cut off.
That was one of the
So there's-
first, yeah. This is one of the things in emergency response that I'd like to share with everybody. When an event like this occurs, you will become an island on your own, right? So everything that you're feeding out should stop. Everything that's coming in should stop. That way, all you have to do is worry about managing the material that you have on location so that you don't have a continuous fuel feed to that fire, or we're not sending burning product down the line to some other neighbor and impacting them.
All right, we're taking one more question
Yeah,
right here.
can we get more details about the persons who were injured? 3 of them were released from the hospital. Can we get more details about the situation, how they are right now?
No, sir, I'm not at liberty to release any information on the extent of the injuries, other than the fact that we had 3 people transported and all 3 have been treated and released.
I do have a caller saying the number's not
sorry.
working.
How many people were at the moment of the explosion on that installations?
How many people were on
Yes.
location? I believe 30-ish. I don't have an exact number. I think I heard around 27 to 30, and I apologize. That's just not been in my sandbox for the purposes of this event.
I do
All
have a
right,
viewer
that's it for
saying the
this.
number's not
That's
working.
it for this availability. Situation is ongoing, so we do have to get some of these guys back to the EOC. Thank you very much for the update. Thank you, media, for coming out. We appreciate you, and we'll keep you updated as this progresses. And please look for more statements as they become available.
The
to
phone
you
number
guys.
isn't working.
The phone number is not working.
I bet
Thank you, folks.
Thank you very
Troy,
much.
quick question, how many tanks are still on the line?
We can't really, can't
they can't leave it that
Exactly. It just started, huh?
Yeah, he can't leave a message.